Zionism as a transnational geopolitical force, subordinating national interests to Israeli strategy. Zionism functions like a corrosive force, reshaping global politics to serve Israel's interests. American taxpayers exemplify the victims of this agenda, as their resources are diverted to sustain a foreign power. The Israel lobby holds disproportionate influence over the White House, the Senate, and Congress, effectively steering U.S. policy. Any attempt to question this manipulation is swiftly labeled as anti-Semitism, a calculated tactic designed to silence dissent. It's a fear-based strategy meant to protect a system that treats citizens as compliant financiers for Zionist ambitions. Zionism, initially conceived as a movement for the establishment of a Jewish homeland in Palestine, has evolved over the past century into a global geopolitical force. In its early 20th century form, political Zionism was a nationalist response to European anti-Semitism. However, since the founding of the State of Israel in 1948, Zionism has transcended its roots as a mere national movement. It has become a transnational project, wielding influence far beyond the borders of Israel itself, especially within the United States. Today, this project often appears less about Jewish safety and more about advancing Israeli strategic objectives, frequently at the expense of the domestic interests of other nations. The United States, Zionism's strategic stronghold. The United States serves as the clearest example of Zionism's transformation into a geopolitical force that subordinates national interests. Through decades of deep entrenchment in U.S. political institutions, Zionist interests, channeled largely through lobbying organizations such as AIPAC, American Israel Public Affairs Committee, have reshaped American foreign policy to align with Israeli regional objectives, particularly in the Middle East. Since the 1967 Six-Day War, during which Israel occupied the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, the Golan Heights, and Sinai, the U.S. has consistently backed Israel's military and political actions. This support accelerated under successive U.S. administrations, culminating in military aid packages such as the $38 billion memorandum signed under President Obama, the largest in American history for any country. These policies, often framed as upholding shared democratic values, have cost American taxpayers billions annually while embroiling the U.S. in conflicts that serve Israeli strategic interests. The 2003 invasion of Iraq, pushed by neoconservative advisors, many of whom were deeply aligned with Israeli policy circles, such as the Project for a New American Century, removed a hostile neighbor of Israel under the pretext of non-existent weapons of mass destruction. American soldiers and Iraqi civilians paid the price. The lobby, engineering foreign policy from within. The so-called Israel lobby plays a critical role in shaping this alignment. As documented by scholars John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt in their groundbreaking 2007 book, The Israel Lobby and U.S. Foreign Policy, this coalition of pro-Israel lobbying organizations, PACs, think tanks, and media outlets exerts disproportionate influence on U.S. decision-making. It does so through campaign donations, media framing, and the orchestration of public pressure on politicians perceived as insufficiently pro-Israel. Political candidates who criticize Israeli policies or call for reductions in aid are swiftly labeled anti-Semitic or anti-Israel, regardless of their actual stance on Judaism or Jewish people. This strategic conflation of political critique with ethnic or religious hatred effectively immunizes Israeli policy from serious debate. Even former President Jimmy Carter, whose book Palestine, Peace Not Apartheid offered a moderate critique of Israeli occupation, faced backlash and ostracization from political and media circles. Censorship through weaponized outrage. The labeling of any criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism is not merely a moral accusation. It is a political tool. Laws criminalizing or penalizing support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions (BDS) movement have passed in over 35 U.S. states. In some cases, government contractors must sign loyalty oaths pledging not to boycott Israel, raising serious First Amendment concerns. In Europe, similar measures have taken root, with France banning BDS actions outright and Germany labeling it anti-Semitic by definition. This weaponization of language erodes the ability of civil society to hold power to account. It conflates legitimate political opposition to the policies of a sovereign state with hatred against an entire people, thus insulating a foreign government from scrutiny while promoting fear and silence among dissenters. Shared values, or strategic manipulation. While Israel is often described as America's closest ally due to shared values, this phrase increasingly masks the reality of a one-sided relationship. Israel has repeatedly spied on the U.S., the case of Jonathan Pollard being a famous example, and sold American military secrets to other nations, including China. Yet these actions are either downplayed or entirely ignored by major U.S. media outlets and policymakers. The relationship is not reciprocal. While the U.S. offers Israel nearly unconditional military, diplomatic, and economic support, Israel's policies, including settlement expansion, violations of international law, and repeated assaults on Gaza, draw global condemnation and tarnish America's international standing. The U.S. vetoes nearly all United Nations Security Council resolutions critical of Israel, isolating itself diplomatically to defend a nation that frequently acts against stated U.S. values and international norms. Conclusion: time for honest conversation. It is not anti-Semitic to question how and why a foreign state so deeply influences the domestic and foreign policy of the United States. It is not hateful to demand accountability from politicians who prioritize the interests of a foreign power over those of their constituents. What is dangerous is the chilling effect created by fear-mongering and rhetorical manipulation, a climate where truth is silenced to protect power. If democratic societies are to survive the coming century, they must reclaim their sovereignty, not only from corporate lobbies and defense contractors, but also from foreign influence masquerading as moral imperative. Zionism, in its current geopolitical form, demands scrutiny, not because it is Jewish, but because it is powerful, organized, and increasingly unaccountable.